Chapter 275. Chu Xiu did not know how to react to the sudden death of a future big shot. When he came to his senses, the first thing Chu Xiu considered was whether this matter would benefit him or not. Anyway, the plot had deviated and changed. Qiu Zhenqing's life or death had nothing to do with him. However, he was interested in the cultivation method in Qiu Zhenqing's hands. Chu Xiu knew where some powerful cultivation methods in the original version were, and he also knew who had them. However, the problem was that he could not get them even if he wanted to. Chu Xiu naturally wanted the cultivation method in Qiu Zhenqing's hands, but the problem was that Qiu Zhenqing was the owner of the Pegasus pasture. He was a great master in the oneness of heaven and human beings' realm. Moreover, the Pegasus pasture was considered an industry of the Eastern Qi imperial court. With Chu Xiu's current poor cultivation, he would be courting death if he wanted to snatch something from Qiu Zhenqing. Chu Xiu suddenly turned to Du Guangzhong and asked, "What was Qiu Zhenqing's strength when he died?" Du Guangzhong was stunned and said, "He was a great master in the oneness of heaven and human beings' realm. However, the Pegasus pasture is very important to the Eastern Qi. That's why the Eastern Qi imperial court was alerted and specially came to the Guangzhong torture room to ask someone to investigate." Du Guangzhong thought that Chu Xiu asked about Qiu Zhenqing's strength because he was curious that the matter had alarmed the Eastern Qi imperial court. Chu Xiu's eyes showed a hint of surprise when he heard this. If this was the case, then Qiu Zhenqing should have obtained the cultivation method by now and had not succeeded in practicing it. However, he was killed for some unknown reason. At present, Chu Xiu did not know whether the cultivation method had fallen into the hands of others after Qiu Zhenqing's death. Even Chu Xiu did not know whether Qiu Zhenqing's death had anything to do with the cultivation method. However, this did not affect Chu Xiu from going to investigate. If the cultivation method had not been taken away by others, Chu Xiu would have made a big profit this time. Therefore, Chu Xiu asked directly, "Hall Master, who are you going to send?" Du Guangzhong said, "It's not decided yet. Although the one who died wasn't a martial arts grandmaster, it's still something that even the royal family of Eastern Qi is paying attention to. So Lord Clan Leader is going to select some elites to go to Eastern Qi. Are you interested in that as well?" Du Guangzhong felt a little strange. This kind of thing was a good thing for others, but it didn't mean much to Chu Xiu. The Jianghu constables who were invited by the major powers would naturally have an extra income, which was definitely much higher than their salary. But the question was, did Chu Xiu lack money? The commercial lifeline of the entire Guanxi region was in the hands of Chu Xiu, so he didn't care about this little bit of mission income. Moreover, although Chu Xiu's strength was the best among the younger generation of the Guangzhong torture room, he knew nothing about the special skills of the Guangzhong torture room, such as investigating traces and tracking down the murderer. Even the ordinary Jianghu constables in the innate realm were better than Chu Xiu. Therefore, Du Guangzhong had always felt that Chu Xiu should not be an inspector, and that it was more suitable for him to go to the criminal division. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I'm a little interested. I'll go to the headquarters and see if I can get this job." Although the missions of the torture hall were all assigned by the hall master, Chu Xiu naturally had a way to get them. After giving some instructions to Du Guangzhong and the Ghost Hand King, Chu Xiu went straight to Guangzhong City. However, he didn't go directly to the headquarters, but went to Chu Yuanqing's place. Seeing that Chu Xiu had come, Chu Yuanqing thought that he had come to Guangzhong on official business, but Chu Xiu said, "I'm here this time to ask for a favor from you, Brother Chu." Chu Yuanqing waved his hand and said, "What is it? Just tell me, Brother Chu." If anyone else wanted to help, Chu Yuanqing would most likely agree, let alone Chu Xiu. For the current Chu Yuanqing, he considered himself to be Chu Xiu's talent scout, and their relationship was very close. Chu Xiu said, "It's like this. I heard that Eastern Qi wants someone to help with a case, and I'm planning to go to Eastern Qi. I'm good friends with Mo Tianlin, a disciple of the Mo family of Shangyang, and he wants to discuss something with me. It just so happens that I don't have a reason yet, so I want to use this case to go to Eastern Qi." Many people knew that Chu Xiu was good friends with Mo Tianlin of the Mo family of Shangyang. Chu Yuanqing didn't have any doubts but said directly, "Don't worry, leave this to me. It just so happens that the hall master is going to choose someone tomorrow. Brother Chu, with your strength, the hall master won't refuse. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, Then I'll have to trouble you, Brother Chu. No need to be so polite between us. Come, let's go to my place for a drink first. Chu Yuansheng directly pulled Chu Xiu back to his courtyard. The next morning, Chu Yuansheng arrived early in the Guanzhong torture room's meeting hall. Other than Guan Siyu and the criminal division's third leader, Bloody Ghost Butcher, Si Ming, there was also a white-faced, beardless eunuch in a black brocade robe. The eunuch asked slowly in a slightly shrill voice, Hall Master Guan, this time His Majesty sent me here to say that this matter must be investigated thoroughly. It's best if the Guanzhong torture room sends more people here. After this matter is over, there will be plenty of rewards. Guan Siyu nodded. She was about to say something when she saw Chu Yuansheng being led in. Guan Siyu introduced Chu Yuansheng and said, This is eunuch Wang Jin, the deputy chief of the Palm Seal Department of the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace. Chu Yuansheng nodded. This time, the people sent by the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace were really important. There were 3 departments in the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace. They were organizations that were loyal to the imperial family, and the chief eunuchs were all martial arts grandmasters. Legend had it that the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace also had a chief of 3 departments. He controlled all the forces in the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace, and was an old monster who had served generations of the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace. His strength was even more frightening. Although this Wang Jin was only a deputy chief, he should be a great expert at the oneness of heaven and man realm. He was the emperor's confidant. For the Eastern Qi Imperial Palace to send him here, it was obvious that they valued this matter very much. Then Guan Siyu pointed at Chu Yuansheng and said, This is Chu Yuansheng, the descendant of my Guanzhong torture room's previous hall master, Chu Kuanga. When Wang Jin heard Chu Kuanga's name, he immediately stood up and cupped his hands at Chu Yuansheng. So it's the great hero of Guanzhong. I've been impolite. Although I'm just a eunuch, the person I admire the most is someone like great hero Chu. I wish I could look up to him. What a pity. Wang Jin did not seem to be pretending. In fact, his attitude towards Chu Yuansheng was even better than his attitude towards Guan Siyu. Chu Yuansheng smiled and did not mind. He had seen Wang Jin mention his father the moment he saw him, saying how much he admired and looked up to him. He was already used to it. Guan Siyu asked, Yuansheng, what's the matter? I'm discussing something with eunuch Wang. If you're not in a hurry, you can wait for a while. We'll talk about it later. Chu Yuansheng said, I'm here because of this matter. Brother Guan, aren't you still thinking about who to send to Eastern Qi? What do you think of Chu Xiu? Among the warriors in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu is the strongest among the younger generation. Moreover, he has been to Eastern Qi's Jeju Prefecture before. That place is not far from the Pegasus farm. Isn't it suitable to send him? Chu Xiu had been recommended to the Guanzhong torture room by Chu Yuansheng. Now that Chu Yuansheng wanted to recommend Chu Xiu to carry out this mission, it was very normal. However, the only thing that Guan Siyu was conflicted about was Chu Xiu's ability. In terms of ability, there was no need to talk about Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu's performance at the God Weapon Conference was enough to prove everything. But this time, the Guanzhong torture room was sending someone to investigate a case. It was fine for Chu Xiu to kill people, but could he investigate a case? Just then Wang Jin suddenly said, The Chu Xiu you guys are talking about. Is he the Chu Xiu who crippled the Azure Water Sword sect's Shenbai and killed the evil extreme sect's Tong Kaitai at the God Weapon Conference? Chu Yuansheng nodded and said, That's right. Eunuch Wang, have you heard of this name? Wang Jin nodded and said, I have heard of the most outstanding young elite of this generation in the Guanzhong torture room. A few months ago, he was very impressive at the God Weapon Conference. This Chu Xiu is not bad. Let him do it. His Majesty had personally instructed him, Wang Jin, to handle this matter safely and to find more people to help him. But the problem was that Wang Jin really didn't understand the internal affairs of the Guanzhong torture room. After being reminded by Chu Yuansheng, Wang Jin then recalled that this Chu Xiu was rather famous. It could be said that he was more famous than 99% of the martial artists in the Guanzhong torture room. Since that was the case, choosing this Chu Xiu was definitely the right choice. In any case, in Wang Jin's opinion, the stronger one's reputation and ability were, the stronger one's ability would be. After hearing Wang Jin say this, Guan Xiyu had no choice but to say, "All right then. This time, let Chu Xiu lead the team to Eastern Qi. At the same time, bring more people." Chu Simo's godson, Chu Xiaoda, Xiao Yi's disciple, Cheng Zhouhai, Yin Buotong's new disciple, Wang Qianping, and Ximing's disciple, Zhong Ping, follow them as well. Chu Xiu will lead the team. Guan Xiyu was also a little afraid that Chu Xiu wouldn't be able to handle the situation by himself. Among these people, although Chu Xiaoda and Cheng Zhouhai were young, they were experienced constables, and were very good at finding traces. After Yin Buotong's previous disciple, Li Tianhao, had been crippled by Chu Xiu, he had taken in a new disciple, Wang Qianping, who was also a veteran constable in the Guanzhong torture room. His ability in this aspect wasn't bad either. The only ones who weren't good at these things were probably Chu Xiu and Zhong Ping. However, it didn't matter. It was fine as long as these two were good at killing. Turning her head, Guan Xiyu said to Wang Jin, "These people are practically the most outstanding among this generation of disciples in the Guanzhong torture room. Are you satisfied with letting them go, eunuch Wang?" Wang Jin nodded and said, "Sure, not bad. In that case, I'll have to trouble Hall Master Guan this time." How could Wang Jin know the background of Chu Xiu and the others? In any case, he heard that these people were either the disciplinary officer's disciples, godson, or disciples of the disciplinary officer's leader. They didn't look like ordinary people. As long as he brought them back to Eastern Qi, he would have completed half of his mission. The people who died were only martial artists at the oneness of heaven and man realm. They weren't martial Dao masters, so it was more than enough to bring Chu Xiu and the others along. Chapter 276. At the entrance of the torture chamber headquarters, Chu Xiu and the other warriors who were preparing to go to Eastern Qi had already gathered. Among them, Chu Xiu was not very familiar with Chu Xiaoda and Zhong Ping. When they saw each other, they just greeted each other. Cheng Zhouhai, who had fought with Chu Xiu before, was convinced by Chu Xiu's strength, smiled and said, "Brother Chu, we meet again. You are indeed the one who defeated me. I knew you would make a name for yourself at the God Weapon Conference." Zhong Ping said coldly, "There are many people who can defeat you, but not all of them will make a name for themselves at the God Weapon Conference." Cheng Zhouhai shrugged at Chu Xiu and said, "It's really boring to deal with people who don't know how to joke. Brother Chu, Hall Chief Guan asked you to lead the team for this case. Do you have any news?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I only heard about it for the first time. I only know some general information. Moreover, I am not good at this aspect, so I will have to rely on you guys." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Cheng Zhouhai and Chu Xiaoda both had a good impression of Chu Xiu. They knew that Zhong Ping and Chu Xiu were not good at detecting traces, but because Chu Xiu was the most famous and powerful, the Hall Chief still asked Chu Xiu to lead the team. Cheng Zhouhai was afraid that Chu Xiu would be obstinate and self-opinionated. If an outsider gave orders to an expert, then the case would be difficult to solve. The Eastern Qi royal family attached great importance to this case. If they completed the task well, they would be rewarded handsomely. But if they failed, not only would they damage the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room, but they would also be punished when they returned. Now it seemed that Chu Xiu had a good sense of propriety. He knew that professional things should be done by professionals. At this moment, a 30-year-old physical invulnerability martial artist walked over from afar. He cupped his hands towards the crowd and smiled apologetically. "My apologies, everyone. I'm a little late." Cheng Zhouhai secretly transmitted his voice to Chu Xiu. "This guy is Yin Buotong's new disciple, Wang Qianping. Brother Chu, be careful of this guy. This guy is famous for being a smiling tiger. Last time, when Li Tianhao was crippled by you, Yin Buotong had to take in a disciple to keep up appearances. This Wang Qianping's strength is average, but his methods are extremely sinister. He got rid of a few competitors, and he's good at flattery. That's how he became Yin Buotong's disciple." At this moment, Wang Qianping walked forward and bowed to Chu Xiu. His attitude was very humble. "This must be Chu Xiu's official Chu, right?" Official Chu is indeed the number one among the younger generation of the Guangzhou torture room. He's an outstanding figure who surpasses all other martial artists of the same level. With Official Chu as the leader, this task should be a piece of cake, and can be completed easily. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and looked at Wang Qianping. Logically speaking, he was Yin Buotong's disciple, so his attitude towards Chu Xiu should be hostile. In the end, this fellow's attitude was extremely humble, and even had a hint of flattery. However, in reality, Chu Xiu had seen through his intentions with a single glance. Chu Xiu was just as Cheng Zhouhai had said, a man with a smile on his face. On the surface, it looked like he was flattering Chu Xiu and putting a lot of good words on Chu Xiu. But Cheng Zhouhai, Chu Xiaoda, and Zhong Pinka, who were around Chu Xiu, were also outstanding figures of the younger generation of the Guangzhou torture room. Wang Qianping's words were meant to make Chu Xiu die from flattery, so that Cheng Zhouhai and the others would feel resentful and dissatisfied towards Chu Xiu. But his plan was in vain. Even after hearing what they said, Cheng Zhouhai and the others did not feel resentful. It was not that they were very broad-minded, but during the competition, Chu Xiu had already shown his overwhelming strength. He deserved to be the number one among the younger generation of the Guangzhou torture room. This was the truth. What was there for them to be jealous of? Wang Qianping did not see that battle, but now he was still playing these little tricks in front of Chu Xiu. It was ridiculous. At this time, Chu Xiu kept looking at Wang Qianping, saying nothing. Until Wang Qianping felt a little scared, he said indifferently, "This task was personally arranged by the hall leader, and the other party is also a member of the Eastern Qi royal family. Such a big task is a piece of cake for you to tell me. How can you complete the task with such a slack attitude? Do you need me to tell the hall leader to get someone else to do it?" Wang Qianping's expression changed slightly, and he said with a sheepish smile, "Official Chu, you must be joking. I was just saying. Now that we are there, we will naturally investigate carefully and complete the task as soon as possible." After giving Wang Qianping a warning, the deputy manager of the Palm Seal Department, Wang Jin, also arrived with his men. Chu Xiu cupped his hands at Wang Jin and said, "Greetings, eunuch Wang." Seeing the aura of Chu Xiu and the others, Wang Jin nodded with satisfaction and said, "You are Chu Xiu, right? Not bad. Since Hall Leader Guan has handed everything to you, I believe in Hall Leader Guan's judgment. Get to the bottom of the case as soon as possible. When I go back, I will be able to report to His Majesty. You will also be rewarded handsomely." Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Rest assured, eunuch Wang. Professional matters should be handled by professionals. The Guangzhou torture room is definitely professional in this aspect." Wang Jin nodded and said, "All right, let's get going now." With that said, the group of people got on their fast horses and rushed to Eastern Qi as fast as they could. On the way, Chu Xiu also asked Wang Jin, "Eunuch Wang, did Eastern Qi find any clues or information immediately after Qiu Zhenqing was killed?" Cheng Zhouhai and the others were also listening attentively. Chu Xiu was asking on their behalf. After all, they were the ones who were really good at this kind of thing. Wang Jin shook his head and said, "There were almost no clues. Although Qiu Zhenqing was the owner of the Pegasus farm, it was impossible for him to live in the farm. Instead, he lived in a manor near the farm. Moreover, Qiu Zhenqing was a simple man and didn't like luxury. He didn't have any disciples either. There were only his wife and son in the entire manor, as well as 5 servants who took care of them. In the end, all of them were killed overnight. 3 days later, when the people from the Pegasus farm found it strange that Qiu Zhenqing hadn't shown up for such a long time, they personally came to the manor to look for him. It was only then that they realized he was already dead. Then did Qiu Zhenqing have any enemies? Chu Xiu asked again. Wang Jin shook his head and said, "It's most likely that he was killed in the pugilistic world. The people from Eastern Qi have also investigated, but they didn't find any clues. Before Qiu Zhenqing joined our Eastern Qi, he was just a horse dealer. He was half a pugilistic world man and half a businessman. Moreover, he was kind and had a good reputation. It's said that when some pugilistic world people were so poor that they couldn't even afford a horse, Qiu Zhenqing would take the initiative to give it to them without taking a single cent, after Qiu Zhenxing joined our Eastern Qi imperial court, our Eastern Qi imperial court wouldn't be stingy to our own people. Qiu Zhenxing's strength increased greatly, and so did the scale of the Pegasus farm. From then on, Qiu Zhenxing would also help some pugilistic world people who came and went to the Pegasus farm. As long as he could help and it didn't violate the pugilistic world's morality, Qiu Zhenxing wouldn't refuse. In my opinion, Qiu Zhenxing is the real benevolent one. At least, he's much more benevolent than the Northern Yan's morgue. Over the years, many people have received Qiu Zhenxing's kindness, but it's really hard to find anyone who has a grudge against him. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. He really didn't expect Qiu Zhenxing to have such a good reputation. However, in the original plot, Qiu Zhenxing became famous because of the cultivation method that he accidentally obtained. After all, Qiu Zhenxing's talent and strength could only be considered average. Although the Pegasus farm was not small, it was still a horse breeding business. In the end, Qiu Zhenxing relied on a cultivation method to step into the martial Dao master level. One could imagine how powerful that cultivation method was, so most people had their eyes on that cultivation method. This time, Chu Xiu also suspected that Qiu Zhenxing's death was related to that cultivation method. He only hoped that it was not related, otherwise, Chu Xiu's trip would be in vain. Half a month later, Chu Xiu and the rest arrived at the Ji State Prefecture. However, they did not enter the prefecture. Instead, they went directly to the manor where Qiu Zhenxing was. The Pegasus farm was on a plain in the east of the Ji State Prefecture. Qiu Zhenxing's manor was not far away from the Pegasus farm. It was a small villa. Just like what Wang Jin said, Qiu Zhenxing was a simple person. For example, Chu Xiu had seen the Luo family's house in the Jianzhou Prefecture. It was definitely 100 times more luxurious than Qiu Zhenxing's manor. However, Qiu Zhenxing, a powerhouse at unity of heaven and man, lived in such a place. It was really simple, especially since the Pegasus farm's property could even be said to be richer than a sect. After stepping into the manor, there was a commotion inside. Wang Jin immediately frowned. At that moment, in the courtyard of the manor, a young man in his 20s was angrily saying to a middle-aged martial artist in armor, "Sir, I'm a son. Now that my father is dead, I don't even have the right to see the corpse and pay my respects?" The middle-aged martial artist in armor had a cold expression on his face. He had the cultivation of unity of heaven and man. When he heard what the young man said, he only said coldly, "Young Master Qiu, I'm sorry. The higher-ups have ordered that no one is allowed to touch the corpse before the people from the Guanzhong torture room arrive. Even this manor has been taken over by the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. No one is allowed to act recklessly." The young man looked sad and angry. There were 5 martial artists around him, 4 men and 1 woman. They were not weak. 3 of them were at the 5 Qis collecting in Mind Realm, and 2 of them were at the 3 Flower Realm. At that moment, they were all comforting the young man. Wang Jin walked in and said with a frown, "What's the commotion? What's going on?" Seeing that everyone was looking at them, Wang Jin said to Chu Xiu, "This is Fang Jinqi, the general of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army's Breaking Vanguard Battalion. He was also sent by His Majesty to assist in this case." Looking at Fang Jinqi, Chu Xiu could not help but have a strange look in his eyes. This was because he had used the Breaking Vanguard Battalion's token to pretend to be a member of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army to escape from the sinful branch leader. The Dragon Riders' Imperial Army members who died in the Chu family were all from the Breaking Vanguard Battalion, including Chu Xiu's cheapskate father. However, Chu Xiu did not expect to meet the real deal today. Chapter 277. When Li Gui saw Li Kuei, Chu Xiu wasn't afraid. Instead, he cupped his hands towards Fang Jinqi and said, "Greetings to General Fang." Back then, not many people knew the details of Chu Xiu pretending to be a Dragon Rider Imperial Guard. The Heavenly Sin branch leader had already gone to the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters, so it was probably impossible for him to have any dealings with the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard. Meanwhile, the Hall Master of the White Tiger Hall had been killed by the Heavenly Sin branch leader, so there was no evidence. What was there for Chu Xiu to be afraid of? Fang Jinqi looked at Chu Xiu and nodded. He said coldly, Nothing in the manor has been touched, and the corpses have been preserved. You can inspect them at any time. Wang Jin looked at the few people in the manor and frowned. Who are they? What are they doing here? Didn't His Majesty order that before the people from the Guanzhong torture room arrive, outsiders are not allowed to enter the manor? Before Fang Zhenqi could say anything, the young man said with grief and indignation, "This is the Qiu clan's manor. Now that my father has died, how am I an outsider?" Wang Jin said in surprise, "Isn't Qiu Zhenqing's son dead? Who is he?" Fang Zhenqi said indifferently, "He is Qiu Zhenqing's illegitimate son, Qiu Dongmao. He has always been staying in Shangyang County. He only rushed over after hearing about Qiu Zhenqing's death." Wang Jin nodded. Chu Xiu stood behind Wang Jin and sent a voice transmission. "Eunuch Wang, what's going on with this illegitimate son? Qiu Zhenqing is an expert at the unity of heaven and man realm, and he isn't from any aristocratic family. How did he produce an illegitimate son?" Ordinary wealthy merchants had groups of wives and concubines. For a martial artist of Qiu Zhenqing's level and his identity as the Pegasus farm owner, it was not a problem for him to have as many women as he wanted. Moreover, in order to maintain the nobility of their bloodline, ordinary aristocratic families would always find women from aristocratic families of the same level to marry. The children of such aristocratic families would be considered illegitimate children. Qiu Zhenqing was a martial artist from a humble background. Of course, the more children he had, the better. How could he have illegitimate children? Wang Jin explained telepathically. Qiu Zhenqing came from a humble background. He's really one of those Jianghu people who work as escorts and horses for others. His wife married him before he made a name for himself. From then on, Qiu Zhenqing swore that he would only love his wife for the rest of his life. This has become a legend in the martial arts world of Eastern Qi. Therefore, if Qiu Zhenqing really has an illegitimate child, it's normal for him to raise the child outside because he doesn't want to break his promise to his wife. As she spoke, Wang Jin looked at Fang Zhenqi. Fang Zhenqi also nodded, proving that Qiu Dongmao was indeed Qiu Zhenqing's son. The Imperial Dragon Riders also had their own intelligence channels. If Qiu Dongmao was a fake, he wouldn't have been able to enter the manor. Who are the rest of them? Wang Jin asked. Fang Zhenqi said calmly, "They're the Jiangdong Five. They've received Qiu Zhenqing's kindness in the past. This time, they're here to escort Qiu Dongmao, Qiu Zhenqing's only son. They even want to overestimate themselves and avenge Qiu Zhenqing." Fang Zhenqi's words were somewhat sarcastic. Even Eastern Qi had not found out where the murderer was, and these people wanted to avenge him? However, when Chu Xiu heard the name of the Jiangdong Five, he couldn't help but look at them a few more times. The so-called Jiangdong Five were 5 young heroes from Jiangdong Commandery of Eastern Qi. They imitated the chivalry manner and swore an oath of brotherhood. They were motivated to be chivalrous and help those in need. To a practical person like Chu Xiu, this so-called oath of brotherhood was a little ridiculous, especially when these people imitated the chivalry manner. The chivalry manner was indeed famous in Jianghu. 30 years ago, the 5 swore an oath of brotherhood. 30 years later, the chivalry manner had become one of the 6 gangs of human harmony. However, only those who truly knew the ins and outs of the story would know why the 5 swore an oath of brotherhood only became 1. Some of the things that happened were very ironic. At present, the Jiangdong Five had just begun to show their talents. Therefore, the 5 of them had really become sworn brothers because of the spirit of brotherhood. They had done many chivalrous deeds in the past few years, and had a good reputation around Jiangdong Commandery. The nickname of the Jiangdong Five was given to them by the martial artists of Jiangdong Commandery. However, in the original plot, he knew that these 5 people would eventually fall apart. The inside story was very interesting, and it was enough to make the Jianghu gossip spread for months. The strength of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes was worthy of the title of young elites. Although they could not compare to Chu Xiu, who was ranked on the Longhu leaderboard, they were still considered relatively young. The 5 of them were the leader, Cheng Buhui, who was in his 40s. He was in his 40s and had the power of 5 Qi's origin state. He was dressed in coarse clothes and carried an ancient heavy sword on his back. However, his aura was extraordinary. His face was square and resolute, and he was the calmest. The second eldest, profound flowing water Dong Xiangyi, was nearly 40 years old. He was handsome and had a small mustache. He behaved like a playboy from an aristocratic family. He wore a brocade robe and held a folding fan. His strength was at the 5 cheese collecting in origin state. The third eldest was blood-avoiding sword Lu Tong. He was about 30 years old, and had a parallel scar on each side of his face. He looked very awkward and indifferent. He also had the cultivation of 5 cheese collecting in the origin, but he was only in the early stage. The fourth prince, Autumn Moonblade Wu Tiandong, was also in his 30s. He was handsome and wore a white warrior suit with 2 blades at his waist. He was dressed like a Jianghu hero and had the cultivation of the 3-flower realm at one's prominence. The most eye-catching of the 5 was the youngest of the 5, Dancing Willow Returning Wind, Lu Qingqing. She was also the only woman among the 5. Lu Qingqing looked like she was in her early 20s, but she was actually over 30 years old. However, she had entered the 3-flower realm at one's prominence very early, so she still looked young and beautiful. She wore a snow-white gauze dress, but the wide sleeves and waist were tied with a rope to prevent it from affecting her performance during a fight. However, it also revealed her curvaceous figure. Chu Xiu stared at Lu Qingqing with a strange expression. It was said that women were the source of trouble, but Lu Qingqing, who could only be described as beautiful but not stunning, was the source of trouble. In the original plot, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, who had a promising future, were destroyed by this woman, although she didn't mean it. At this moment, Lu Qingqing felt Chu Xiu's gaze. She frowned slightly and took a step back, a look of disgust in her eyes. Women would always encounter all kinds of things when they roamed the world, especially beautiful women. Lu Qingqing had encountered many people who looked at her strangely when she roamed the world, but the gaze Chu Xiu gave her made her feel very uncomfortable. It was as if she was being seen through. Sensing Chu Xiu's gaze and Lu Qingqing's discomfort, the fourth prince Wu Tiandong took a step forward and stood in front of Lu Qingqing. He shouted angrily at Chu Xiu. "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a woman before?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I have seen women before, but I have never seen a woman who thinks too highly of herself. Luo Feiheng of Wu Juan's Luo family is a good friend of mine. Although he doesn't act like a woman, his appearance is not something any woman can compare to. And you, if you are afraid of others looking at your woman, then go hide at home and act like a lady from a wealthy family. Since you want to roam the world, why are you afraid of others looking at you?" Lu Qingqing's face turned pale at Chu Xiu's words. Although she was a person of the world, she was also a woman. Which woman could tolerate someone saying that she thought too highly of herself, and that her appearance was inferior to others? Although it was true that she was inferior, Wu Tiandong had a fiery temper, and Lu Qingqing was the woman he had always admired. Hearing this, he immediately pulled out the 2 slender autumn moon blades from his waist and shouted angrily, "If you have the guts, say that again." Before Chu Xiu could speak, Wang Jin shouted in a sharp voice, "Stop it, all of you." The great master of oneness of heaven and men was angry, and it was Wang Jin, the deputy director of the front department and the eldest of the 5 heroes, Cheng Buhui, who immediately pulled Wu Tiandong and said in a low voice, "Fourth brother, calm down, put away your blades." Cheng Buhui had the highest reputation among the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Since his eldest brother had spoken, Wu Tiandong had to put away his blades unwillingly. Wang Jin snorted coldly and said, "From now on, Qiu Zhenqing's case will be handed over to Chu Xiu of the Guanzhong torture room. Official Chu is here, the others must listen to Official Chu's command. For the sake of Qiu Dongmao, the 5 of you can watch from the side. But if you dare to make trouble, I don't care if you are the 5 heroes or the 5 mice, get out of here." After all, Qiu Zhenqing was a member of the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. Over the years, he had also obtained a lot of fine horses for the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, so he could be regarded as conscientious. Even if the Eastern Qi royal family wanted to win people's hearts, they had to find out the truth of this matter. Now that Qiu Dongmao was Qiu Zhenqing's only bloodline son, it was estimated that he would receive some preferential treatment from the Eastern Qi Imperial Court in the future. So Wang Jin gave him face. Otherwise, even if the 5 heroes of Jiangdong had a great reputation in Jianghu, so what? They were just a few Jianghu ruffians, and he did not take them seriously at all. If he asked them to get out, he would do it. At this time, Cheng Buhui and the others did not have time to be angry at Wang Jin's tone. They were more surprised by the identity of Chu Xiu. Previously, they only knew that the person who came was from the Guanzhong torture room, but they did not expect it to be Chu Xiu, who had shown extraordinary talent in the God Weapon Conference a few days ago. In fact, Chu Xiu's reputation in the land of Eastern Qi was even greater than that in the Guanzhong torture room. After all, most of those who witnessed Chu Xiu's great power in the God Weapon Conference were warriors of Eastern Qi. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong were all from the Eastern Qi, so they had naturally heard of Chu Xiu's reputation. There was a hint of seriousness in their eyes. This person was not someone to be trifled with. Before and after the start of the Divine Weapon Conference, those who went against him were either dead or crippled. Ordinary people could only see Chu Xiu's reputation, but they could see the ruthlessness and savagery that was hidden deep in Chu Xiu's bones. Cheng Buhui quietly pulled Wu Tiandong's arm, indicating that he should not have a conflict with Chu Xiu for the time being. This time they were here to protect Qiu Dongmao. Since Qiu Zhenxing's family was destroyed, Qiu Dongmao, as the only son of Qiu Zhenxing, might also be in danger. At the same time, they also wanted to avenge their former benefactor, Qiu Zhenxing. It was meaningless to have a conflict with Chu Xiu here. Chapter 278. After the scene calmed down, Chu Xiu did not bother with the 5 people. He directly ordered Chu Xiaoda and the others, "Go in and start investigating." Chu Xiaoda and the others nodded, and began to enter the various rooms of the manor to investigate the traces and examine the bodies. At this time Qiu Dongmao said, "Since the people from the Guanzhong torture room are here, can I see my father's body now?" Cheng Buhui and the others all stared at Chu Xiu. Although they did not want to have any conflict with Chu Xiu, it would be too much for Chu Xiu to refuse their son's small request to see his father's body. Qiu Zhenxing was their benefactor, and Qiu Dongmao was Qiu Zhenxing's only son. Of course, they had to stand up for Qiu Dongmao. This time, Chu Xiu did not make things difficult for him. He just said faintly, "Sure, but you'd better not touch anything. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences if you damage the scene." Wu Tiandong snorted coldly, and the others did not dare to refute. They directly brought Qiu Dongmao in to see Qiu Zhenxing's body. The bodies of the Qiu family were placed in an empty room. The Dragon Rider's imperial army had already preserved them in ice coffins. Qiu Zhenxing's appearance was that of a middle-aged man in his 50s. He had stepped into the 3-flower realm very late, so his appearance was a little old, but his appearance was still square and imposing. At this time, there were no wounds on Qiu Zhenxing's body, but his face was gray and exuded a strange greenish-black color, which looked very evil. After seeing Qiu Zhenxing's body, Qiu Dongmao seemed to have broken down in an instant. He lay in front of Qiu Zhenxing's ice coffin and cried loudly. He cried as if his heart was broken, and he looked very miserable. On the side, Cheng Buhui comforted him. "Young Master Qiu, our benefactor has passed away. Please restrain your grief. The most important thing now is to find the murderer and kill him to comfort our benefactor's spirit in heaven." Qiu Dongmao nodded sadly, but he still couldn't help but cry. When Chu Xiu saw this scene, he frowned slightly. A strange feeling welled up in his heart, and the source of this strange feeling was autumn and winter. Chu Xiu wasn't a good person, and he didn't mind using the greatest evil to figure out a person. Qiu Dongmao was Qiu Zhenxing's illegitimate child. In fact, according to Qiu Zhenxing's strength and status, Qiu Dongmao was also one of his children. There was no such thing as an illegitimate child. In the end, because of Qiu Zhenxing's vow, as Qiu Zhenxing's son, he could stay by his father's side and be carefully taught. In the future, he could even become the heir of the Pegasus farm. With the support of Eastern Qi, he could look into the martial arts world and inherit Qiu Zhenxing's connections. His future was limitless. Qiu Dongmao, on the other hand, could only be left in Shangyang County. Everything he received was pitifully little, and he could only see his father a few times a year. Qiu Zhenxing's eldest son, Qiu Dongning, already had the strength of the inner Qi realm. Qiu Dongmao was obviously over 20 years old, but he was still in the blood condensation realm. The difference was like heaven and earth. If it was Chu Xiu in this situation, he would definitely feel resentment. It should be said that anyone would feel that it was unfair. However, Qiu Dongmao's expression was so sorrowful and sincere. Either he was really a filial person who only cared about the relationship between father and son, and didn't care about his own treatment at all, or Qiu Dongmao was acting, but his acting was very good. He ignored the reasonableness of it. His heartbroken appearance made it seem like his father had died. Even Chu Xiu couldn't find any fault with it. Of course, his father had indeed died. However, compared to the former, Chu Xiu still believed the latter more. Human nature was evil. How many people who grew up in such an environment could have a healthy mentality? At this time, Cheng Zhouhai said lightly, "Young Master Qiu, please step aside. I want to check Qiu Zhenqing's body." As he said that, Cheng Zhouhai took out a small knife. The edge of the knife was still shining with a cold light. Qiu Dongmao's expression changed. "How do you want to check?" Before Cheng Zhouhai could say anything, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Young Master Qiu, how we check doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. Do we, the Guanzhong torture room, have to report everything to you?" Qiu Dongmao's expression was sorrowful. He pointed at Cheng Zhouhai and said, "He wanted to destroy my father's body. Do I have to stand by and watch?" At this time, Cheng Buhui pulled Qiu Dongmao to the side and said, "Young Master Qiu, the Guanzhong torture room's methods of checking traces and investigating cases are still trustworthy. With the Guanzhong torture room taking action, I believe we can smoothly find the murderer who killed Father Benefactor." Hearing Cheng Buhui's words, Qiu Dongmao stopped talking. He stood aside, but his eyes were fixed on Cheng Zhouhai. Cheng Zhouhai began to check the appearance of Qiu Zhenqing's body skillfully. In the end, he took off the clothes of the body. There was a dark purple palm print on Qiu Zhenqing's chest. This made everyone look at Chu Xiu subconsciously. With the announcement of the Longhu list, some traces of Chu Xiu's martial arts were also written down by the people from Wind Sweeping Tower. Many people in the Jianghu knew that there was an evil palm technique in Chu Xiu's martial arts. It would leave such a mark on a person's body. Then, the demonic flame would enter the body and burn the person's meridians and internal organs. However, no one thought that Qiu Zhenqing's death had anything to do with Chu Xiu. When Qiu Zhenqing died, Chu Xiu was still in seclusion in the Guanzhong torture room. Moreover, Qiu Zhenqing was a great master who had stepped into the oneness of heaven and man realm for many years. Even if Chu Xiu were to kill him, he would not be able to. There were many palm techniques in the Jianghu that could leave such a mark. Cheng Zhouhai cut open Qiu Zhenqing's body. He saw that Qiu Zhenqing's internal organs had begun to rot and turn black, emitting a strong stench. Cheng Zhouhai frowned. He took out some strange tools and even medicine bottles and other things and examined them carefully. It was not until 15 minutes later that he sewed up Qiu Zhenqing's body again. After examining the other bodies, he finally let out a sigh of relief. Chu Xiu asked, "What's the result?" Cheng Zhouhai said in a deep voice, "The cause of Qiu Zhenqing's death was an expert who used an extremely evil palm force to hit his chest. The palm force directly shattered Cheng Zhouhai's meridians and injured his internal organs. He was killed with one palm strike. There were traces of a struggle on the body. The killer should not be a martial Dao master, but a great master at the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, his strength was stronger than Qiu Zhenqing." Everyone present was stunned. Cheng Zhouhai was talking nonsense. If the killer was not as strong as Qiu Zhenqing, then how did Qiu Zhenqing die? However, Cheng Zhouhai then said, "They were both at the oneness of heaven and man realm, but Qiu Zhenqing died too easily. The killer's palm was the main cause of death, but the secondary cause of death was because Qiu Zhenqing was poisoned by a chronic poison called July begonia, or a kind of spiritual medicine with slight poison. The July begonia is produced in Miaojiang and only blooms under the moonlight in July every year. Its pharmacology is complicated. It can condense true qi and strengthen meridians. It is a good material for refining several kinds of healing medicine. However, if the July begonia is not refined, it is slightly poisonous. Long-term consumption can slowly solidify the meridians in the body. Not only will the person be crippled, But it will also cause the true qi to backfire, and there is a risk of serious injury. The reason why Qiu Zhenxing was killed so easily was because there were some traces of solidification in the meridians in his body when he attacked. Therefore, he was a step slower when he attacked. For a martial artist of this level, being a step slower would mean death. In the end, the opponent found an opportunity and killed him with one palm strike. However, the poison in Qiu Zhenxing's body was also very strange. The July begonia is colorless and tasteless. Strictly speaking, it is not even considered a poison. Therefore, poisoning is a subtle process, especially for a martial artist of Qiu Zhenxing's level. As long as he does not attack with all his strength, he will not notice any abnormalities. Moreover, no matter how many July begonia he eats, he will not be backfired by the true qi. Therefore, I feel that the July begonia seems to have been planted for someone else. The people in Qiu Zhenxing's manor all have the July begonia's poison in their bodies, especially Qiu Zhenxing's son, Qiu Dongning. He is only at the internal invulnerability realm. His astral qi flows, and his meridians are not too tough. If he takes the July begonia for a few more months, the person who will be crippled will be him. Cheng Zhouhai said all the things he had detected in one breath. Chu Xiu also nodded at the side. This time, it was also fortunate that Guan Xiyu had the foresight to send Cheng Zhouhai and the others. Otherwise, if Chu Xiu came, he would at most be able to see that Qiu Zhenxing was killed by a palm strike. As for the July begonia's poison, he would definitely not be able to see it. Can you see the murderer's background? Chu Xiu asked. Cheng Zhouhai hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, I can't see it just from the corpse. The time it took for the attack was too short. Both sides did not even exchange 10 moves before Qiu Zhenxing was killed. Therefore, there were almost no traces left. Furthermore, the traces left behind by the palm strike should not be the signature martial arts of the major sects or rogue cultivators in the Jianghu. It could be a martial art created by someone or opened from an ancient secret box. A martial art that is unknown to outsiders. Furthermore, I feel that the person who poisoned him and the murderer are not the same person. If both sides are the same person, then the other party should be familiar with the July begonia's characteristics. They should know that this medicine can only affect experts of Qiu Zhenxing's level and not directly kill him. In the end, the murderer took the risk of Qiu Zhenxing being discovered. The July begonia in Qiu Zhenxing's body had already accumulated for a period of time before he took action. According to my speculation, the murderer should not know that Qiu Zhenxing was poisoned. Chu Xiu touched his chin. He pondered for a moment and asked, when were Qiu Zhenxing and the others poisoned? Cheng Zhouhai said, about a month ago. However, with Qiu Zhenxing's cultivation, the July begonia's poison would no longer continue to worsen after 10 days. As for the others, the poison in their bodies continues to worsen. Chu Xiu nodded and suddenly turned his head. He asked Qiu Dongmao, young Master Qiu, where were you a month ago? Chapter 279. Chu Xiu's sudden question caused everyone present to be stunned. Qiu Dongmao was about to say something. He opened his mouth subconsciously but immediately swallowed it back. He said angrily, of course I'm in Shangyang. Official Chu, what do you mean? Are you suspecting that I poisoned my father? Cheng Buhui looked at Chu Xiu with an unfriendly gaze and said coldly, Official Chu, the Guangzhong torture room is indeed good at detecting traces and investigating cases, but everything needs evidence. Why are you asking young Master Qiu this question? The Jiangdong 5 heroes had escorted Qiu Dongmao all the way to the Pegasus farm, and the 5 of them had a good impression of him. Qiu Zhenxing was generous, and he advocated simplicity. However, his eldest son, Qiu Dongning, was somewhat arrogant and foppish. The 5 of them had met him before, and they did not have a good impression of him. Qiu Dongmao, on the other hand, was humble and polite, and he was a kind and filial person. He was often sad about Qiu Zhenxing's death, and the 5 of them saw it. They had a good impression of him. However, Chu Xiu was questioning Qiu Dongmao as if he was interrogating a criminal, which displeased the 5 of them. Chu Xiu said calmly, don't be so agitated. I'm just asking. Why are you so sensitive? Qiu Dongmao's eyes were filled with anger, But Chu Xiu did not care at all. In fact, he did not care how Qiu Zhenqing died. What he really cared about was where Qiu Zhenqing's cultivation method was. If it had been taken away, or if Qiu Zhenqing had destroyed it after memorizing it, Chu Xiu would be in trouble. When he asked Qiu Dongmao that question just now, it was really just a casual question. He just wanted to trick the other party. Human nature was evil. From the beginning, Chu Xiu did not believe that there would be people in this world who did not have any resentment after being treated so unfairly. July begonia's poison could not kill Qiu Zhenqing, but it could kill Qiu Dongning. Who would benefit the most from Qiu Dongning's death? Of course, it was autumn and winter. Qiu Zhenqing needed someone to inherit his martial arts, his horse breeding skills, and his position as the owner of the Pegasus farm. This person was definitely Qiu Dongning in the past. If Qiu Dongning was dead, then it could only be Qiu Dongmao. At this time, Chu Xiaoda and the others had also finished investigating the other parts of the manor and returned to report. Chu Xiaoda shook his head and said, "The other party only came to kill. Other than the traces of murder in the manor, nothing else was touched. Their methods were very direct and efficient, leaving no traces behind." Wang Jin said with a frown, "Official Chu, don't tell me you guys have no clue at all?" The Guanzhong torture room had always been famous for investigating traces and solving cases. The professionalism that Cheng Zhouhai displayed just now was indeed good. If it were someone else, even a martial Dao master would not be able to see through it. But the problem was that the Eastern Qi Imperial Court wanted the murderer and an explanation. It was useless to argue about anything else. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Don't be anxious, Eunuch Wang. The investigation of the Guanzhong torture room also requires looking at traces and clues. At present, the murderer has done it too cleanly. We definitely won't be able to find him in a short time. Otherwise, if the case was so simple, Eastern Qi would be able to solve it themselves. Why would they come to my Guanzhong torture room? Rest assured, Eunuch Wang. We will definitely give the Eastern Qi Imperial Court an explanation for this case." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, although Wang Jin was still a little dissatisfied, he still nodded and said, "All right, I'll go back to the Imperial City to report. I'll be back in a day or two. I hope that official Chu will have clues by then." Having said that, Wang Jin turned and left. At this time, Wu Tiandong suddenly muttered in a low voice with slight disdain, "Guanzhong torture room? That's all there is to it." Chu Xiu suddenly looked up. The heavenly demon dance in his hand had already been unsheathed. With a deep demonic aura, it directly slashed at Wu Tiandong. No one present had expected Chu Xiu to suddenly attack. Even Fang Zhenqi was unable to react in time. Wu Tiandong was startled. Instinctively, he held the autumn moon dual sabers in his hands horizontally in front of him. The sabers were like a full moon, bursting with dazzling saber light. However, he was still sent flying by Chu Xiu's saber. He leaned against the wall behind him. His hands couldn't help trembling, and he couldn't even hold the sabers. Cheng Buhui and the other three immediately drew their weapons. Their gangqi exploded around them as they bellowed, "Chu Xiu, what's the meaning of this?" The 5 heroes of Jiangdong were sworn brothers, and they were as close as siblings. Even if the person in front of them was Chu Xiu, who had the Guanzhong torture room as his backing, they still dared to attack him. Chu Xiu put away his heavenly demon dance and said slowly, "If you don't know how to speak, then don't speak. Do you think an idiot like you can slander the Guanzhong torture room? People have to be responsible for their own words and actions. You're already so old. Yet you can't even control your own mouth. You must know that disaster comes from the mouth. If your mouth stinks, then don't speak. Do you understand?" Wu Tiandong glared at Chu Xiu. His face was filled with shame and anger. At the same time, there was also a little fear in his heart. He and Chu Xiu were both 3 Flower Realm warriors, but Chu Xiu's saber just now made him feel a sense of powerlessness. It was a sense of powerlessness that he couldn't resist at all. Fang Zhenqi said coldly, "If the 5 of you continue to cause trouble, then get out of here. And Chu Xiu, you better restrain yourself. I, Eastern Qi, invited you here to solve problems, not to cause trouble." As a general of the Dragon Rider's Imperial Army, Feng Zhenqi valued the word rules the most. The Dragon Rider's imperial army also required strict obedience. Moreover, Chu Xiu's personality was simply temperamental. Just now he attacked without warning. If such a person became his subordinate, he would definitely teach him a lesson. Chu Xiu shrugged and said, "If others don't provoke me, I naturally won't bother to provoke others." Turning his head, Chu Xiu said to Chu Xiaoda, "Take me to the manor again. Turn it upside down and see if there are any secret rooms or something like that." Qiu Zhenxing was quite popular in Jianghu, but now he was killed for no reason. There may be some hidden story behind this. Chu Xiaoda nodded and began to search the manor again with Chu Xiu. This time, Qiu Dongmao also followed closely behind Chu Xiu, as if he was worried that Chu Xiu had taken some of Qiu Zhenxing's belongings. In fact, Chu Xiu was indeed looking for traces of that technique, even though he knew that it was unlikely that Qiu Zhenxing would put that technique out in the open. Nowadays, most of the top techniques were engraved on the technique jade slips. This way, it was easier to understand the true meaning of martial arts within. There were also some techniques that were written with special materials on special items, just like the Great Sorrow of Heaven and Earth Yin and Yang that Chu Xiu had obtained. They also contain the true meaning of martial arts. This kind of thing could be found at a glance. The Qiu family's manor was only so big. There were less than 10 houses, and they found nothing after searching all of them. At this time, the sky was almost dark. Chu Xiu and the others were not in the mood to continue investigating, so they bid farewell to Feng Zhenqi. However, Qiu Dongmao insisted on keeping vigil for Qiu Zhenxing, but he was chased out by Feng Zhenqi. As the private army of the Eastern Qi royal family, the Dragon Rider's imperial army could be said to be strict. Even if Qiu Dongmao was Qiu Zhenxing's son, he could not stay here alone. The place where Chu Xiu and the others rested was in the Pegasus farm. There were some guest rooms there, so the people of Eastern Qi arranged for Chu Xiu to stay here. In the guest room, Chu Xiu looked at the people around him and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, you know that I am not very good at this. What suggestions do you have for me now?" Zhongping shook his head indifferently. He was from the Criminal Investigations Department, and he only knew how to kill people. It was best not to look for him for other things. Wang Qianping smiled and said, "This time Hall Master let Official Chu lead the team. I will do whatever Official Chu says." Along the way, Wang Qianping behaved in an extremely low-key manner. He did whatever Chu Xiu asked him to do. He did not overtly agree, but covertly disobeyed, as if there was really no grudge between him and Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu would not be fooled by him. This guy was like a smiling tiger. When they first met, he had already dug a trap for Chu Xiu. Who knew what he was planning now? The only people present who were willing to help were Chu Xiaoda and Cheng Zhouhai. The two of them looked at each other, and Cheng Zhouhai said, "This case is really a bit tricky. First of all, from the corpses and the traces of fighting, there are pitifully few clues. There is no clue at all. This clue has been cut off. Moreover, Qiu Zhenxing's reputation in the pugilistic world is really good. It is almost impossible to find any enemies. Even if there is a grudge occasionally, it is not to the extent of killing people. In fact, he does not even have the ability to kill people. The two most important results have been cut off. Even if we use the stupidest method, which is to investigate Qiu Zhenxing's enemies one by one, we can't do it." The few people present looked at Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu was not good at these things, Chu Xiu was the one leading the team this time. If the case was not completed, Chu Xiu's responsibility was greater than theirs. It was impossible for him to stay out of it. Chu Xiu pondered for a moment and said, "I don't know much about this, but I only know that any pugilistic world killing can't escape two words: hatred and profit. Qiu Zhenxing has almost no enemies, so we might as well guess that the other party killed him because of profit. Qiu Zhenxing must have touched someone's profit, which was why he was killed." The traces on Qiu Zhenxing's corpse during the day also showed that the person who poisoned him and the person who killed him were two different people. It is obvious that the person who wanted to kill Qiu Zhenxing suddenly had the idea. If we do the opposite and ignore the clues in the manor, we will go outside to see where he has been and what he has done during this period of time. I reckon we will gain something. Cheng Zhouhai thought about it and said, "This is feasible. We can give it a try. Now that the clues are cut off, we can only do this. After the plan was made, everyone rested for the time being. On the second day, Chu Xiu and the rest asked the people under the Pegasus farm, and found out that Qiu Zhenxing spent most of his time in the manor and the Pegasus farm. He only went to the Ji State Prefecture a month ago. Chu Xiu and the rest immediately went to the Ji State Prefecture to investigate. Chapter 280. If one were to talk about who was the most well-informed in a prefecture, it would definitely be the local tyrant in the prefecture. Chu Xiu vaguely remembered that the Ji Province Prefecture's Purple Cloud restaurant was the local tyrant, the 5 Yuan Gang's business. Hence, after arriving at the Ji Province Prefecture, Chu Xiu went straight to the Purple Cloud restaurant. At this time, in the Purple Cloud restaurant, the 5 Yuan Gang's hall master, Smiling Tiger, Han Kuei, was playing with a 9-dragon coin in boredom. Some time ago, during the God Weapon Convention, the Purple Cloud restaurant's business was booming. Even though the fight between Chu Xiu and the disciples of Sword King City had destroyed a floor of the Purple Cloud restaurant, the Purple Cloud restaurant still made a lot of money. Now it was much more deserted. At this time, a few people stepped into the Purple Cloud restaurant. When Han Kuei saw the face of the person opposite him, he trembled violently. The 9-dragon coin in his hand also fell to the ground. Why did this killing god appear here? Although Han Kuei was shocked, he still put on a flattering smile on his face. He walked over and said, "Why did official Chu come to my Purple Cloud restaurant again?" Chu Xiu said with a faint smile. "You don't welcome me?" Han Kuei hurriedly said, "Absolutely not. I'm more than happy that official Chu can visit my small Purple Cloud restaurant. Official Chu and the rest, please go upstairs. I'll go prepare a banquet for you." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no hurry. I came today to ask you something." Han Kuei immediately said, "Official Chu, if there's something you want to ask, this lowly one will definitely tell you everything he knows." "This isn't the place to talk. Let's talk somewhere else," Chu Xiu said. After Han Kuei found a quiet guest room, Chu Xiu asked, "Do you know the Pegasus Ranch's owner, Qiu Zhenxing?" Han Kuei's eyes revealed a hint of understanding. He said, "Of course I do. Official Chu, are you here for this case this time?" Qiu Zhenxing was very famous in Eastern Qi. Now that he was killed, the Ji Province Prefecture was so close to the Pegasus Ranch, so of course they got the news immediately. Thinking of Chu Xiu's identity in Guanzhong torture room, Han Kuei easily guessed that he should have been invited by the Eastern Qi Imperial Court to investigate this case. Chu Xiu said, "Qiu Zhenxing came to the Ji State Prefecture some time ago. I want to know what Qiu Zhenxing did there, and who he met. The more detailed, the better." Han Kuei's mouth moved. Just as he was about to say something, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Don't refuse and don't make excuses." Han Qing was to say something. "You too I too Han to say. I chu I be I have to say the chu chu you I has be I. Chu 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 Xiu. Also I won't treat you badly if you help me, Chu Xiu. Last time, I destroyed a floor of your Xian restaurant, so I'll compensate you this time." As he spoke, Chu Xiu took out a bottle of 6th Revolution pills. For a martial artist like Han Kuei, this was something that could only be found by chance. Hearing this, Han Kuei's face revealed a helpless expression. He knew that he couldn't refuse this matter today. Therefore, Han Kuei took the bottle of pills on the table, called a member of the 5 Yuan Gang, and whispered a few words in his ear before letting him leave. In less than an hour, the member came back with the news and handed it to Han Kuei. Han Kuei handed the news to Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu, Qiu Zhenxing did come to Ji Province Prefecture a month ago, but he only went to the Dragon Gathering Pavilion for less than an hour and left. After that he did not communicate with anyone. As for why Qiu Zhenxing went to the Dragon Gathering Pavilion, and who he met, it's not something that I can know. After all, the Dragon Gathering Pavilion is not an ordinary place. With the strength of the 5 Yuan Gang, only the gang leader is qualified to enter it, and it's only the lower 4 floors." A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. "Alright, I got it. You can leave first." Han Kuei immediately left with the pills, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Everyone, do you see anything wrong? Cheng Zhouhai and the rest nodded. It was such an obvious clue, of course they could see it. Qiu Zhenqing was a simple person. Whether it was his habit in the past or he was putting on a show, he had persisted in this habit all his life. In the end, he went to a luxurious place like the Dragon Gathering Pavilion for a meal. It did not seem right whether he invited others or others invited him. Let's go to the Dragon Gathering Pavilion and meet that Prince Anil. At this time, Prince Anil, Jiang Wenyuan, was standing on the 9th floor of the Dragon Gathering Pavilion, looking down at the Ji State Prefecture below. Beside him stood an ordinary-looking middle-aged martial artist. It was Mr. Liu from the Phaseless Demon Sect. The Eastern Qi royal family has invited the people from the Guanzhong torture room. When you killed Qiu Zhenqing, did you leave any traces? Jiang Wenyuan suddenly asked. Mr. Liu grinned and said, "Don't worry, Your Highness. The Phaseless Demon Sect is professional when it comes to killing. I have never used my bone-eroding heart-pressing palm in front of outsiders. Even the Guanzhong torture room will not be able to see it. However, I still have some doubts. Why did you kill Qiu Zhenqing? Didn't you join forces with that person?" Jiang Wenyuan sneered. Join forces? What a joke. None of the people with the surname Liu are good. They were just using me. Do they really think I don't know? Since the water is already muddy, let's make it even muddier. If the Liu family doesn't fight amongst themselves, how can I have a chance? Mr. Liu, who was at the side, smiled and didn't say anything. He couldn't be bothered with the messy internal affairs of the Eastern Qi. After all, the Phaseless Demon Sect was only doing this for money. However, recently, Jiang Wenyuan was getting more and more impatient. If this went on, the Phaseless Demon Sect would have to consider changing partners. At this time, someone suddenly came to report that Chu Xiu had brought the people from the Guanzhong torture room to check the records of the Dragon Gathering Pavilion's guests. This stunned Jiang Wenyuan. He suddenly turned his gaze to Mr. Liu and sneered. Didn't you say that your side did a clean job? Why would the people from the Guanzhong torture room come to my Dragon Gathering Pavilion? Mr. Liu froze for a moment, but then he smiled. Your Highness, you're wrongly accusing me. If I'm exposed, the people from the punishment hall will only be able to find the Phaseless Demon Sect. They will definitely find me first, and then through me they can find you, Your Highness. But now they came directly to the Dragon Gathering Pavilion. It's obvious that you exposed yourself here. That's why they found out. I told you that you attacked Qiu Zhenqing not long after he came to the Dragon Gathering Pavilion. Being so impatient, it's hard to guarantee that no one will find out. Jiang Wenyuan's face darkened. He sneered. Find out? If they have the ability, then they can come and check my Dragon Gathering Pavilion. Even if it's the people from the Eastern Qi royal family, they can't do as they please in my Dragon Gathering Pavilion, let alone the Guanzhong torture room. I'd like to see who dares to come and check my Dragon Gathering Pavilion. At this time, on the first floor of the Dragon Gathering Pavilion, several warriors from the Dragon Gathering Pavilion were blocking the first floor, confronting Chu Xiu and the others. These people were all Jiang Wenyuan's followers. For example, Dominating Sword Cha Kuei, Blood Rain Cold Light Sword Xiao Ting, and Uncle Qi, who had fought with Chu Xiu before. They were all people that Chu Xiu was familiar with. There were countless warriors watching from the side. There had never been anyone who dared to cause trouble in the Dragon Gathering Pavilion in recent years. Uncle Qi looked at Chu Xiu coldly and said, Chu Xiu, don't think that just because you won some fame in the God Weapon Conference that you have the right to do as you please in my Dragon Gathering Pavilion. This is Eastern Qi, not your Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu said plainly, Old man, don't be angry. Everything has to be reasonable. I don't want to make things difficult for you, but this time, I'm representing the Guanzhong torture room to investigate the case in Eastern Qi. Why isn't your Dragon Gathering Pavilion people from Eastern Qi? Uncle Qi scoffed and said, Qiu Zhenqing is dead. You can go to the Pegasus farm to investigate the case, but why did you come to my Dragon Gathering Pavilion? It's very simple. I suspect that Qiu Zhenqing's death has something to do with your Dragon Gathering Pavilion. Chu Xiu's words were earth-shattering, and everyone present was stunned, because in their impression, The dragon-gathering pavilion had nothing to do with Qiu Zhenxing from the Pegasus farm. Why would Jiang Wenyuan kill Qiu Zhenxing out of boredom? Even if he killed Qiu Zhenxing, he wouldn't get the Pegasus farm. Right at this moment, Jiang Wenyuan brought his men downstairs and said coldly, Chu Xiu, if you dare to spout nonsense again, even if the Guanzhong torture room and Guanxiu are behind you, they still can't protect you. I have no enmity with Qiu Zhenxing, so why would I kill him? Chu Xiu said plainly, Your Highness, you're wrong. I never said that you killed Qiu Zhenxing. I only said that Qiu Zhenxing's death has something to do with the dragon-gathering pavilion. Instead, Your Highness, you keep saying that you killed Qiu Zhenxing. This is a little like confessing without being pressed. Jiang Wenyuan scoffed and said, Don't play word games with me. The dragon-gathering pavilion is my business. If you say that Qiu Zhenxing's death has something to do with the dragon-gathering pavilion, isn't that saying that I killed Qiu Zhenxing? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, That's not what I meant. It's just that according to reliable information, Qiu Zhenxing came to your dragon-gathering pavilion a month ago, and in the end, he was killed a month later. This is exactly what I want to investigate. Jiang Wenyuan flicked his sleeves and said with a cold smile, What a joke. There are countless martial artists that come and go to my dragon-gathering pavilion on a daily basis. Who in the pugilistic world knows if they're dead or alive tomorrow? If they die, could it be that they're going to blame it on my dragon-gathering pavilion? Chu Xiu took a step forward and said in a low voice, Everyone in the world knows that Qiu Zhenxing's character is simple. As a Heaven-Man Unity Realm great expert, he himself only lives in a small manor. In the end, a month ago, Qiu Zhenxing suddenly came to your dragon-gathering pavilion, this place to squander money. Now, I'm very curious who Qiu Zhenxing came to your dragon-gathering pavilion to see. Now, I want to check the guest records of your dragon-gathering pavilion. This shouldn't be too much, right? Chapter 281. Chu Xiu's words caused Jiang Wenyuan's expression to change slightly. This was only a very small flaw. At most, it was a point of suspicion. He did not expect that Chu Xiu would actually investigate the dragon-gathering pavilion because of this point of suspicion. But Jiang Wenyuan still took a tough stance. The dragon-gatherer pavilion has its own rules. How can we divulge information about our guests? You want to investigate the Guanzhong torture room? You're not qualified. Get out of here in 10 breaths, or bear the consequences. With that, Jiang Wenyuan waved his hand. Immediately, more than 10 of Jiang Wenyuan's hanger-ons surrounded Chu Xiu and the others, glaring at them covetously. In the land of Eastern Qi, Jiang Wenyuan had the right to be so arrogant. Anyway, he had the immunity medallion. Even the royal family of Eastern Qi could not do anything to him, let alone an outsider like Chu Xiu. Cheng Zhouhai approached Chu Xiu and whispered, Brother Chu, this is troublesome. What should we do? Why don't we retreat for now? Although Cheng Zhouhai was young, he was actually a veteran constable of the Guanzhong torture room. He had also been sent to other places to carry out missions. But to be honest, this was the first time they had seen something like this. The Guanzhong torture hall had been invited here. Logically speaking, the local forces should have cooperated, but in the end, they were about to fight. They were here to solve a case, not to snatch a territory. Was there a need to be like this? Chu Xiu said plainly, Retreat? It's easy to retreat, but don't forget, we are representing the Guanzhong torture room. Once we retreat, it means that the Guanzhong torture room has lost face. With Hall Chief Guan's personality, will he spare us or you? Cheng Zhouhai was speechless. It was hard to say. It was easy to admit defeat, but it would be a loss of reputation. However, at this moment, Jiang Wenyuan snorted coldly and said, You're not going to scram? Fine, beat them all out. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Wenyuan's mercenaries rushed towards Chu Xiu and the others. Jiang Wenyuan's subordinates were at the inner and physical invulnerability realms, as well as the 3 flowers at one's prominence and the 5 qis collecting in mind. Moreover, they were more numerous than the people from the Guanzhong torture room. Therefore, the people from the Guanzhong torture room were immediately suppressed as soon as they started fighting. This was especially true for Chu Xiu, as he was given preferential treatment. 3 martial artists of the 5 Qis collecting an origin realm attacked Chu Xiu at the same time, forcing Chu Xiu to retreat step by step. In fact, Chu Xiu wasn't in such a miserable state. It was just that he didn't expect to use his full strength. His main purpose for coming to Eastern Qi this time was to get the martial arts manual in Qiu Zhenxing's hands, not the truth of the case. It was not worth it to risk his life for this matter. As long as he didn't act too cowardly in the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, and didn't embarrass the Guanzhong torture room, it would be fine. Although Chu Xiu was in a difficult situation, he was still relaxed. However, Cheng Zhouhai and the others were already doing their best to resist. After all, they were strong, and they didn't even have a 3 flowers at one's prominence. Just when they were about to lose and Chu Xiu was about to pretend that he couldn't win and retreat, a sharp voice suddenly came. "All of you stop." Wang Jin rushed over hurriedly with her men, looking enraged. He had only returned to the imperial city to report on his mission. In such a short span of a day, how did so many things happen? Looking at Chu Xiu, Wang Jin said angrily, "I, Eastern Qi, came to Guanzhong torture room to investigate Qiu Zhenxing's case. How did you find out about the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion?" Chu Xiu said with a deep voice, "It's not that we found out about the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, but that the clues pointed to the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion. Eunuch Wang, Guanzhong torture room is a professional in this area. We won't just randomly frame an innocent person." As he spoke, Chu Xiu told Wang Jin all of their speculations. After listening, Wang Jin also frowned. If it were anyone else, Wang Jin could use his identity to make them give in, but Jiang Wenyuan couldn't. Wang Jin was the deputy general manager of the front of the palace department, and the emperor's confidant. Although his position wasn't too high, in the land of Eastern Qi, he was an existence that could do whatever he wanted. Even some of the collateral royal families had to be polite to him. However, Jiang Wenyuan was a sh*t stirrer in the land of Eastern Qi. No one could provoke him. He was the memorial arch that the Eastern Qi royal family had set up. In the past, the Lu royal family had already said that they would let the Jiang royal family forever enjoy peace and happiness to prove that they were different from the last generation of the Jiang royal family. If they touched him now, wasn't it the same as slapping their own faces? So, on the side of the Eastern Qi imperial court, no one wanted to offend Jiang Wenyuan. Moreover, they all kept a respectful distance from him. But right now, this matter was a bit too big, so Wang Jin could only walk up, clasped his hands at Jiang Wenyuan, and said, "Prince Anil, Qiu Zhenxing's death has already alarmed His Majesty, so right now, please cooperate. If this matter truly has nothing to do with the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, then we won't continue to disturb you. It's only a guest register. The Dragon Gatherer Pavilion records it every day, so flipping through it should be a very simple matter." Jiang Wenyuan coldly snorted and said, "Register? There are so many Jianghu people coming and going in my Dragon Gatherer Pavilion every day. If something like a register is kept, how long would it need to be kept? Of course, it would be cleared every few days." Jiang Wenyuan's words were too half-hearted. Even Wang Jin didn't believe him. The Dragon Gatherer Pavilion was different from other restaurants. Every single customer that came and went were famous in the Jianghu. Every single one of them had to be recorded in detail. Yet, right now, Jiang Wenyuan actually said that the register needed to be cleared in a few days. He, the Grand Prince Anil, didn't even have a place to store the register? Wang Jin still wanted to say something, but he heard Jiang Wenyuan coldly snort and say, "Wang Jin, I'm giving you face by explaining so much to a eunuch like you. If you want to search my Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, bring His Majesty out if you have the ability. Or else, even if the general manager of the front palace department, Zhang Rang, comes, he still won't be able to enter my Dragon Gatherer Pavilion." Jiang Wenyuan's eunuch made Wang Jin furious in his heart. Although he was a eunuch, and had even mocked himself like that before, mocking himself and insulting others were two different concepts. However, at this moment, Wang Jin really didn't dare to fall out with Jiang Wenyuan. After all, he was just a eunuch and a servant of the royal family. If Jiang Wenyuan lost his power, he would dare to step on him while he was down. However, if the Eastern Qi royal family didn't want to touch Jiang Wenyuan, there was nothing he could do. Wang Jin had no choice but to say to Chu Xiu and the others, "Leave first. I'll report this matter to His Majesty, and let His Majesty handle it." Since Wang Jin had already spoken, Chu Xiu and the others naturally wouldn't insist, and left with Wang Jin. When the people of the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion saw this scene, they were shocked. They thought to themselves that Jiang Wenyuan, a prince with a different surname, was really impressive in Eastern Qi. He didn't even care about the deputy general manager of the Front Palace Department, the confidant of the emperor. Watching the figures of Chu Xiu and the others leave, Jiang Wenyuan's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. After returning to the 9th floor, Mr. Lu was still waiting there. He had seen the scene below, but he felt that Jiang Wenyuan had gone a little too far. Everything he had was built on the premise that the Eastern Qi royal family didn't want to touch him. That was why he could cross the line unscrupulously and be arrogant. He didn't even care about Wang Jin, a confidant of the emperor. However, if he really went too far and the Eastern Qi royal family's tolerance for him reached its limit, Jiang Wenyuan would end up in a miserable state. When that happened, people like Wang Jin, who had been wronged by Jiang Wenyuan or had temporarily backed down, would probably explode even more violently. At this moment, Jiang Wenyuan didn't notice Mr. Lu's thoughts. He only said coldly, "Mr. Lu, find a time today and get rid of Chu Xiu for me." Mr. Lu was shocked when he heard this. He said, "Your Highness, you just had a conflict with Chu Xiu, and you want me to kill him? This is clearly saying that you're the murderer. Even an idiot can see the connection between this." Jiang Wenyuan said lightly, "That's right. Even an idiot can see the connection between this. But do you think I look like an idiot? Therefore, no one will think that I'm stupid enough to kill Chu Xiu at this time. They will definitely think that Chu Xiu died because of something else, or that the real murderer is trying to confuse them and frame them." Mr. Lu was taken aback. That did make sense. He had always felt that Jiang Wenyuan was a bit of a fool, but now it seemed that he was quite capable. But it was a pity that Jiang Wenyuan's identity was not so good. If he had been a normal person from the royal family, he would not have come this far. "Since your Highness is prepared, it's done. I'll do it when it gets dark. I promise that your Highness will be satisfied." Mr. Lu made an obeisance with hands folded in front of his chest, and then disappeared. At this time, after nightfall, Wang Jin was gritting her teeth and preparing to write a memorial to censure Jiang Wenyuan. He had just returned from the capital, so he didn't have to go through so much trouble. It was just a matter of a letter. As for Chu Xiu's side, except for him who didn't feel it was a big deal, the others were a bit worried about how to solve this tricky case. The main reason Chu Xiu came here was for the cultivation method in Qiu Zhenxing's hands. If the case was solved successfully, he would not suffer a loss and could get some credit. Of course, if he failed, they could also take the current situation back and say that they did not ruin the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room. But the power struggle between the Eastern Qi Imperial Court was a bit too complicated. It was difficult for them, a group of outsiders, to intervene. The others were thinking hard in the guest room, but Chu Xiu did not bother to stay in the guest room, so he went to wander around the Ji State Prefecture. To be honest, during the last God Weapon Conference, Chu Xiu actually did not wander around the Ji State Prefecture. During the last God Weapon Conference, the smell of gunpowder was strong. Either someone wanted to kill Chu Xiu, or Chu Xiu was killing people. The situation was very tense. But this time, Chu Xiu did not come with the idea of getting the cultivation method. Instead, he came to Eastern Qi with the idea that if he could get it, he would be lucky. So this time, he was very relaxed. However, just as Chu Xiu walked into an alley, a fierce murderous intent suddenly fell, and a powerful Qi movement attacked Chu Xiu, causing Chu Xiu to subconsciously pull out the heavenly demon dance hanging on his waist. The devil Qi swept, and in an instant, the Avicii devil knife suddenly slashed out. Chapter 282. For Chu Xiu, who had cultivated the art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting and the fast and slow 9 words formula, it was not easy to sneak up on him. The art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth soul shifting increased Chu Xiu's mental strength, while the fast and slow 9 words formula's outer binding seal focused on sensing. which could avoid danger and increase one's perception. With these two techniques, it was almost impossible for warriors of the same level to sneak up on Chu Xiu. Even warriors who were a level higher than him couldn't do it. Of course, if it was a warrior who was much stronger than him, Chu Xiu couldn't do anything, just like what was happening now. The person who suddenly attacked was extremely powerful, and Chu Xiu only sensed the murderous intent after the other party had already attacked, so he hurriedly attacked with the 3 blades of Avicii. A monstrous demonic aura swept out, and with a loud bang, Chu Xiu immediately felt an extremely evil palm force blow him away. The palm force even followed his sky demon dance and invaded his meridians, causing Chu Xiu to explode with the inner lion seal, which was then able to expel the extremely evil palm force. TSK, as expected of a weapon forged from the Sky Demon Order. Its power is really extraordinary. Mr. Lu's entire body was covered in a black robe. As he walked out of the darkness, the demonic aura around him was monstrous, making him look extremely terrifying. Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed. Phaseless demon sect? I have no enmity with your phaseless demon sect, and I even have a weapon forged from the Sky Devil Order in my hand. If anyone wants to kill me, it should be those righteous sects that want to kill me. Why do you want to kill me? Mr. Lu shook his head and said, Actually, it's my habit not to talk nonsense before killing people. However, seeing that you're holding a weapon forged from the Sky Devil Order, I can teach you a lesson. It's best to keep a low profile as a person. A tall tree attracts the wind. If there's a next life, remember to keep a low profile. The blade in your hand is not bad. After I kill you, I'll keep it safe for you. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic aura around Mr. Lu surged, and the strength he displayed was at the peak of the unity of heaven and man, second only to a martial Dao master. Chu Xiu frowned. This Mr. Lu's strength was truly terrifying. Judging from his aura, he was even stronger than the former Heavenly Sin branch leader. Of course, the current Chu Xiu was not the same Chu Xiu as when he faced the Heavenly Sin division leader. He was confident that he could escape. However, not even Chu Xiu knew the price he would have to pay. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He directly said in a clear voice, The heavenly demon has no form, and the great Tao is boundless. Sacred fire refines the heart. Demonic fire devours the heavens. Mr. Lu, who was about to attack, froze when he heard this. His eyes were filled with shock as he shouted, Who the hell are you? The 4 sentences that Chu Xiu said just now were the slogans of the Kunlun Devil cult in the past. Moreover, only the direct descendants of the Kunlun Devil cult had the right to say them. It was not strange for people to know these 4 sentences hundreds of years ago. However, now that the Kunlun Devil cult had been completely destroyed by the major sects, and some traces of it had been erased, these 4 slogans were only known by people like the Phaseless Demon sect who were still loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Senior from the Phaseless Demon sect, strictly speaking, I am also a disciple of the holy cult. I inherited the technique of Nangong Wuming, the hall master of the Demon Heart Hall under the Kunlun Devil cult, the 9 transformation demon heart. In the past, I was just a commoner in the pugilistic world. It was because I received Nangong Wuming's inheritance that I was able to reach this level of cultivation. In order to hide my identity as a member of the holy cult, I even specially practiced the techniques of Buddhism and Taoism. That was how I reached this level. After hearing this, Mr. Lu said in a deep voice, It's not safe here. Let's go somewhere else first. After Mr. Lu said this, he already believed in Chu Xiu's identity. In the past, the structure of the Kunlun Devil cult was very complicated. There were halls, palaces, and even organizations with different functions. Those who were not from the inner circle of the Kunlun Devil cult would definitely not know about these organizations. Moreover, Chu Xiu could actually say the name of the former hall master, Nangong Wuming. This was even more certain of Chu Xiu's identity. When the Kunlun Devil cult was breached, some of the warriors of the Kunlun Devil cult were hunted down by the people of the righteous path. Therefore, it was very normal for the inheritance to be lost in other places. Moreover, combined with Chu Xiu's performance all along, he did not have any rejection of the diabolism. He also cultivated many extremely powerful demonic techniques, which was also very much in line with his identity as a diabolism lurking in the pugilistic world. In fact, apart from the fact that Chu Xiu's identity was fake, everything else was real. However, this was something that happened in the future. A few years later, there really was a rising star of the diabolism who made a name for himself in the pugilistic world. The identity of the other party was the successor of Nangong Wuming. So many experts of the righteous path hunted him down. Now Chu Xiu temporarily borrowed this identity, so no one would suspect his identity. Chu Xiu followed Mr. Lu to a slum at the edge of the city. There were dilapidated houses everywhere. Some ordinary people in the Ji State Prefecture were around. Ordinary rich people would not come to such a place, let alone some martial arts experts. Mr. Lu cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu and said, "Fortunately, Chu, you revealed your identity just now. Otherwise, I would have made a big mistake." Mr. Lu's attitude towards Chu Xiu was very polite. He basically treated Chu Xiu as an equal. He had already determined that Chu Xiu was the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, and he was a member of the phaseless demon sect. In the past, he was only a vassal sect of the Kunlun devil cult, so according to the rules, he was even lower than Chu Xiu. However, now that the Kunlun devil cult was gone, even the people of the phaseless demon sect would not adhere to the tradition like before. Chu Xiu also said, "Senior, don't worry about it. My identity is also extremely sensitive, so I don't dare to easily expose it in the pugilistic world. Previously, during the God Weapon Conference, I actually wanted to communicate with the seniors of the phaseless demon sect. However, at that time, things were urgent, so I didn't make it in time." Mr. Lu nodded and said, "People of the Saint sect are now being chased by everyone. If our identity is discovered by those righteous sects, it will be very troublesome. It's always good to be more cautious. Moreover, your move to join the Guanzhong torture room is very clever. The Guanzhong torture room is between the imperial court and the pugilistic world, and also between the righteous and demonic sections. Even if you use some demonic techniques, it won't matter. If it were any other place, it wouldn't be so easy to pass." Chu Xiu nodded and asked, "Senior, who was it that wanted to kill me just now? I have no enmity with the phaseless demon sect, so it definitely wouldn't be the phaseless demon sect that wanted to kill me." Although the phaseless demon sect was currently cooperating with Jiang Wenyuan, it was only a cooperation. However, now that Mr. Lu had determined that Chu Xiu was from the Kunlun devil cult, Chu Xiu was truly on his side. One was just a collaborator, while the other was on his side. Was there a need to ask who would choose between the two? Therefore, Mr. Lu sold Jiang Wenyuan out without a second thought. Mr. Lu said directly, "The person who asked me to kill you is the Prince of Peace, Jiang Wenyuan." As soon as he said that, a strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He really didn't expect that Jiang Wenyuan would actually send someone to kill him just after he had a conflict with him in the day. Jiang Wenyuan shouldn't be able to make such an idiotic decision. However, in the end, Jiang Wenyuan made such a seemingly idiotic decision, which could clear his suspicions. Previously, Chu Xiu always thought that Jiang Wenyuan was an idiot who insisted on courting death. Now it seemed that this guy wasn't stupid, but just too stubborn. He just had to use his cleverness in the impossible. The phaseless demon sect is working with Jiang Wenyuan? Chu Xiu asked. Mr. Lu nodded and said, "We've been working together for a long time. The formation that we laid outside the Mirror Lake Manor was made by Jiang Wenyuan's subordinates. So many of us from the phaseless demon sect were able to sneak into the Mirror Lake Manor because of Jiang Wenyuan's help. You know the reputation of our saint sect. It's a bit sensitive, and most of the time, we can only act in the dark and low-key. The sects that are willing to work with us can be counted on one hand. Jiang Wenyuan is ambitious, and for his ambition, he can disregard everything. Working with our phaseless demon sect is nothing. Just now, I told you to act in a low-key manner, not to mock you, but because your high-profile actions have already attracted Jiang Wenyuan's attention. That's why he is determined to kill you. That guy is a madman now. Even I can't guess what he's going to do now." After listening to Mr. Lu's words, Chu Xiu also reflected in his heart. It seemed that he had indeed been a little high-profile recently. Although it was not to say that he was arrogant, He only considered the interests and ignored the people's hearts. The interests were the easiest to speculate. Now Chu Xiu was now sent by Guanzhong torture room to investigate the case in Eastern Qi. Guanzhong torture room was his backer, and so was Eastern Qi. Whoever touched him would be provoking Guanzhong torture room and Eastern Qi imperial court. So normally, no one dared to touch him. However, Jiang Wenyuan was very abnormal now. His ambition had expanded to the point of explosion, and he had no scruples. Whether to kill Chu Xiu or not, it was only a matter of a thought. By the way, senior, what's going on with Qiu Zhenxing's case? Was it really done by Jiang Wenyuan? Chu Xiu asked doubtfully. Previously, Chu Xiu found out about the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, but he still didn't understand. Jiang Wenyuan and Qiu Zhenxing had no relationship at all. Why did he kill Qiu Zhenxing? He got himself into trouble for no reason. Mr. Lu sneered and said, "It was really done by Jiang Wenyuan, and I killed Qiu Zhenxing myself. As for the specific reason, it's actually a *T fight among the Eastern Qi imperial family. Jiang Wenyuan wanted to meddle in it, but it turned out to be such a big case." Chu Xiu frowned slightly. This matter actually involved the internal struggle of the Eastern Qi imperial family. It seemed that it was really troublesome. Chapter 283. Mr. Lu had completely regarded Chu Xiu as one of his own. So it could be said that he told Chu Xiu everything he knew. He directly told Chu Xiu about the cause and effect of the matter. The founding emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochang, was not the most famous emperor of Eastern Qi, nor was he the most outstanding emperor, but he was the emperor with the most difficult background. The previous emperor of Eastern Qi died early in an accident and did not leave an heir, causing internal strife in the royal family of Eastern Qi. It could be said that rivers of blood flowed. In the end, even some forces of the Eastern Qi imperial court were involved, which caused some of the power of Eastern Qi to be greatly damaged. In the end, a great ancestor of the royal family of Eastern Qi, who had been cultivating in seclusion for many years, personally intervened, and only then did the matter completely calm down. The result was that Lu Haochang, who had low cultivation talent and relatively mediocre abilities, was chosen from the many direct descendants of the royal family to be the emperor. And the first thing that Lu Haochang did when he just inherited the throne was to have sons, and he worked hard to have sons. The previous emperor had learned a lesson from his mistakes. He had no children, which led to the instability of the throne, and it could be said that he was harming others and himself. As a result, Lu Haochang did nothing for so many years, and his greatest achievement was that he had more than 30 sons, and now he had easily lived to the age of 80, but he had no intention of abdicating the throne. Lu Haochang was mediocre in ability, but his sons were not mediocre, especially those who were ranked at the top. The current case of Qiu Zhenxing originated from the struggle between the crown prince of Eastern Qi and the second prince. Lu Haochang had been on the throne for a little too long. Although he had appointed the crown prince long ago, it had indirectly given some opportunities to the other princes, especially Lu Longguang, the second prince of Eastern Qi, whose ambition and ability were no less than that of the crown prince, had long wanted to replace him. Because of the second prince's domineering attitude, the crown prince felt a sense of crisis and kept searching for allies in Eastern Qi. Jiang Wenyuan was one of the crown prince's allies. The other was a hall master of the White Tiger Hall. In the end, the hall master was unexpectedly killed not long after agreeing to the crown prince's request. This caused the crown prince to change his target in a hurry and set his eyes on the Pegasus Farm's owner, Qiu Zhenxing. A month ago, when Qiu Zhenxing went to the Dragon Assembly Pavilion, the people he invited were the crown prince's people. They wanted to rope Qiu Zhenxing into the crown prince's side, but they were rejected by Qiu Zhenxing. Later on, the crown prince secretly investigated Qiu Zhenxing and accidentally found out that Qiu Zhenxing had secretly contacted the second prince. To be fair, the Pegasus Farm was very important to Eastern Qi, but Qiu Zhenxing himself was not. After all, Qiu Zhenxing was just a warrior in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. A warrior in this realm was considered a great master in Jianghu and a respected existence. But in the entire Eastern Qi imperial court, he could only be regarded as the backbone force. For example, Wang Jin, the deputy director, and Fang Jinqi, the general, were both in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, which was not rare in the Eastern Qi imperial court. Therefore, even though he knew that Qiu Zhenxing had turned to the second prince, the crown prince did not want to kill Qiu Zhenxing. Jiang Wenyuan sent Mr. Lu to kill Qiu Zhenxing because he wanted to muddy the waters and prevent the second prince's strength from surpassing the crown prince too much, so that the Eastern Qi imperial family would begin to kill each other. After hearing this, Chu Xiu also breathed a sigh of relief. He did not expect that this matter really had something to do with him. The butterfly effect was very terrifying. If the hall leader of White Tiger Hall had not died, the crown prince would not have thought of recruiting Qiu Zhenxing, and naturally, this series of events would not have happened. Speaking of which, Qiu Zhenxing had died because of him. This was really a joke of fate. However, at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He asked, "By the way, when you fought with Qiu Zhenxing, did you feel that there was something wrong with him?" After the autopsy in Guanzhong torture room, I found that Qiu Zhenxing had been poisoned by July begonia before. Mr. Lu said with a smile. Of course I found out. Although Qiu Zhenxing was born in the wilderness, he was not a nobody. I thought it would take some effort to kill him, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. I thought it was Jiang Wenyuan who did it secretly, but later I found out that it was not Jiang Wenyuan's means. Chu Xiu nodded. This matter was really as Cheng Zhouhai had predicted. The person who poisoned Qiu Zhenxing and the person who killed him were not the same person. It seemed that there were still some secrets behind this. Mr. Lu asked. I killed him, and now Jiang Wenyuan wants to kill you. What are you going to do? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Senior, don't worry. This matter will not involve the phaseless demon sect. In fact, this matter has nothing to do with the phaseless demon sect. In fact, if Jiang Wenyuan didn't kill me this time, I wouldn't care about him. When the matter is found to be related to Jiang Wenyuan, it will involve the battle between the crown prince and the second prince, so I don't have to care about it. But this time, Jiang Wenyuan wants to kill me. If I let him go, he might want to kill me a second time. In the land of Eastern Qi, Jiang Wenyuan was an extremely special existence. Although he was still courting death, it was undeniable that the power that Jiang Wenyuan could use was not ordinary. Now that he was working with the phaseless demon sect, he could use the phaseless demon sect to help him. But in fact, Jiang Wenyuan also had great experts in the oneness of heaven and man realm under his command, and there was more than one. Mr. Lu said, Since you have the idea, it's fine. As a member of the Holy Church, if you need my help, you can contact me at any time. Don't be shy. And if your identity is exposed in the Guanzhong torture room, don't be afraid. You can come to the phaseless demon sect. Although the Holy Church has been destroyed, the people of the Holy Church are still here. They will not let you have no place to stay. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, Thank you, Senior. Mr. Lu shook his head and said, You're welcome. Now that the Holy Church has fallen to this point, not to mention that you are a direct descendant of the Holy Church, even if you want to join the phaseless demon sect halfway, the phaseless demon sect will treat you the same way. As he spoke, Mr. Lu pointed at the place behind Chu Xiu, and a mysterious look appeared in his eyes. He said in a low voice, There's a little mouse behind us. His ability to hide is not bad, and even I was almost fooled. Do as you see fit. After saying that, Mr. Lu directly left. A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. His body moved, and the internal binding seal burst out. His speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in a small alley behind him. What appeared in front of him was Chu Xiaoda, who had a look of panic on his face, and was ready to escape at any time. At this moment, Chu Xiaoda could be said to be extremely regretful. He regretted that he had to come over to watch out of curiosity. Previously, when Chu Xiu was strolling around the Ji State Prefecture, Chu Xiaoda was actually doing the same. However, he did not deliberately follow Chu Xiu, but he accidentally saw Chu Xiu's back. At that time, Chu Xiaoda was just about to say hello to Chu Xiu, but in the end he saw Chu Xiu quickly leaving with a black shadow. Chu Xiaoda was puzzled, and directly followed. He was Chu Simo's adopted son, but in reality, He did not cultivate many Western region techniques. He only obtained one technique by accident, and it could increase his speed and conceal his aura. It was because of this technique that he could secretly hear so many things not far away from Mr. Liu and Chu Xiu. However, the things that Chu Simo heard were a little too shocking. The truth of Qiu Zhenxing's death was one thing, but it was just the internal strife of the royal family. After all, he had been in the Guanzhong torture room for so many years, and he had seen even more bizarre cases. However, the following conversation about the Kunlun devil cult between Chu Xiu and the black-robed man almost made Chu Xiao cry out in shock. He never expected that Chu Xiu would be related to the Kunlun devil cult. This was a matter of life and death. It was because he was shocked by this news that Chu Xiao's state of mind fluctuated a little, causing a flaw in his concealment, which was discovered by Mr. Liu. Chu Xiu looked at Chu Xiao and said expressionlessly, "If I say that I actually have nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult, and that I was just lying to that person just now, would you believe me?" Chu Xiao gave Chu Xiu a smile that was uglier than crying and said, "If I say that I believe you, will you believe me?" Chu Xiao said it like a tongue twister, but in reality, even if he said he believed it, how could Chu Xiu believe him? Chu Xiu looked around and said indifferently, "No martial artists will come here. You know my strength. Are you confident that you can escape from me?" Chu Xiao's heart sank. Not to mention Chu Xiu, who had reached the three-flower realm, even Chu Xiu, who was in the physical invulnerability realm during the competition in the Guanzhong torture room, was an existence that he could only look up to. Li Tianhao easily defeated and humiliated him, but Chu Xiu easily crippled Li Tianhao. There was no need to explain the difference in strength. Just as Chu Xiao was about to fight to the death, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Do you want to live or die?" Chu Xiao's eyes froze, and he said subconsciously, "Of course I want to live." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Since you want to live, I'll give you a chance to live. It doesn't matter whether I'm a member of the Kunlun devil cult or not. Since you've seen all this, I can't let you go so easily." In the past, the Kunlun devil cult had a secret seal called the Holy Fire Seal. Its shape was based on the rootless holy fire at the peak of West Kunlun. "I know what this seal looks like. Let me leave the Holy Fire Seal on your arm. That way, you and I will both become members of the Kunlun devil cult, and we will both have something on each other. Naturally, I won't have to kill you." Chu Xiao's expression suddenly changed when he heard this, and he said angrily, "If you do this, won't I become your slave, Chu Xiu? You have something on me in your hands, and I will be at your beck and call. If that's the case, you might as well kill me." From Chu Xiao's point of view, Chu Xiu was originally a member of the Kunlun devil cult. Even if he was discovered, he could join the phaseless demon sect and turn from a young hero in the Guanzhong torture room into a hero of the devil path. Chu Xiao, on the other hand, was purely wronged. His weakness was in Chu Xiu's hands all his life, and he was at his beck and call. In Chu Xiao's opinion, this was a fate worse than death. Chapter 284. When faced with the same problem, everyone's choice was different. Chu Xiu firmly believed that interests were the foundation of everything. Holding each other's weaknesses was far more reliable than so-called loyalty and promises. For example, the 9-branch hall that Chu Xiu had secretly established was like this. Everything was maintained for mutual interests, and the nature of the 9-branch hall was equivalent to holding each other's weaknesses. Previously, when Chu Xiu had dealt with Yang Ling, he had actually used a similar method. At that time, Yang Ling had decisively chosen to compromise, leaving behind a weakness, and had chosen to be loyal to Chu Xiu. But now Chu Xiao was different. He would rather be killed than to be Chu Xiu's lackey in his next life, and be controlled by Chu Xiu. His personality was much more unyielding than Yang Ling's. Looking at Chu Xiu frowned slightly. Even he had not expected Chu Xiao to choose to refuse. But then, Chu Xiu felt a little relieved. Chu Xiao's reaction was so intense mostly because of his identity. He was a foreigner from the Western regions, so he was extremely sensitive to inferiority. His foster father, Chu Simo, was a slave from the Western regions. So even though he had become a torture officer, He had been criticized and secretly mocked in the Guangzhou torture room. Because of this, Chu Xiaoda had been humiliated and discriminated against. In his opinion, if Chu Xiao really wanted to treat him like a slave, then he might as well fight to the death with Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Who told you that I'm going to control you after I have something on you? I have no intention of treating you as a slave. My ambition is much bigger than you think. I'm not satisfied with the position of patrol, and I'm not even satisfied with the position of torture officer. In the Guangzhou torture room, you and your foster father were both foreigners and discriminated against. Are you willing to be like that for the rest of your life? This pugilistic world has never been measured by bloodline or birth, but by the fists and swords in one's hands. I got hold of your weakness for my own peace of mind, and also for yours. But what I can give you is definitely more than you can imagine." Chu Xiaoda was a little stunned. He didn't expect Chu Xiao to say such a thing to him. Right at this time, Chu Xiao suddenly threw a 9-dragon coin to him, but it was missing a corner, and there was a blood-red blade mark with demonic qi on it. During the God Weapon Conference, I teamed up with Mo Tianlin of Shangyang's Mo clan, Luo Feiheng of Wujun's Luo clan, and Xie Xiaolu of Heaven Alliance to form the 9-branch hall. We didn't become sworn brothers out of loyalty, but out of mutual benefits. With this 9-dragon coin that represents me, you will also be a member of the 9-branch division. As long as you are willing to pay the price in the future, Mo Tianlin and the others will help you at crucial times. Is this gift big enough? Chu Xiaoda held the 9-dragon coin, and a trace of shock appeared in his eyes. Be it Mo Tianlin or Xie Xiaolu, they were both in the top 20 of the Longhu roll. Each of them was an elite disciple from a large family, and some were even the strongest of the younger generation in their respective factions. Even Chu Xiao was the most outstanding person in the Guangzhou torture room. There was no need to mention how terrifying the faction formed by these people was. Any one of them would have a shocking influence. But now he could actually use certain benefits to exchange for their help. This was something that Chu Xiaoda didn't even dare to think about in the past. After all, with his strength, under normal circumstances, he wouldn't even be able to touch Mo Tianlin and the others. Holding the 9-dragon coin, Chu Xiaoda asked hesitantly, "Is what you said true?" Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Why would I lie to you? You can take this 9-dragon coin and go to the Shangyang County to find Mo Tianlin of the Mo family. Ask him to help me investigate Qiu Dongmao." Chu Xiaoda asked doubtfully, "Why investigate Qiu Dongmao? That kid is a bit dishonest. I suspect that the poison in the bodies of the Qiu family members has something to do with him." Chu Xiao said in a low voice. Mr. Lu had already said that he came to kill. Qiu Zhenxing's death had nothing to do with the cultivation method he obtained. It was completely the result of him choosing sides too early, and Chu Xiao bringing about the butterfly effect. Since that was the case, the cultivation method must still be in the Qiu family. But now that the Qiu family members were dead and only Qiu Dongmao was alive, who else would Chu Xiao investigate if not him? Chu Xiaoda's face showed a trace of struggle, but he still silently put the 9-dragon coin in Chu Xiao's hand into his bosom. If he did not agree, he would die. If he agreed, he would live. Most importantly, he would live better than he was now. There was no need to say what Chu Xiaoda should choose. In the Guangzhou torture room, Chu Xiaoda did not even have a close friend among the warriors of the same generation. Just like Li Tianhao, he had looked down on Chu Xiaoda with a look of mockery and ridicule. As for people like Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping, although they did not look down on Chu Xiaoda, they still did not want to have anything to do with him. If he joined Chu Xiao's so-called 9-branch hall, he would be able to get support from Chu Xiao in the Guangzhou torture room. Outside the Guangzhou torture room, he would also be able to get support from more people. An exchange of benefits was always more reliable than anything else. Seeing Chu Xiaoda's action, the corner of Chu Xiao's mouth curled into a smile. Just like what he said to Chu Xiao before, he was very ambitious. Roping in Chu Xiaoda was nothing. Among the younger generation of the Guangzhou torture room, Chu Xiaoda's strength was not considered outstanding. However, Chu Xiao's real target was Chu Simo, who was supporting Chu Xiaoda. Chu Simo and Chu Xiaoda had a very close relationship. They were almost no different from biological sons. It was far from the relationship of a disciple and a subordinate. As long as Chu Xiu roped in Chu Xiaoda, Chu Simo would almost definitely stand on his side. After making his decision, Chu Xiaoda let Chu Xiu imprint the sacred fiery seal on his arm. After reading the plot of his previous life, Chu Xiu naturally knew what the Kunlun devil cult's sacred fiery seal looked like. Now that the real Kunlun devil cult had not recovered, Chu Xiu did not mind using the Kunlun devil cult's banner first. After imprinting the sacred fiery seal on Chu Xiaoda also knew that he would probably be tied to Chu Xiu's chariot for the rest of his life. Therefore, he immediately changed his identity and asked Chu Xiu, "How are you going to deal with Jiang Wenyuan's matter? After all, the one who killed him is a member of the Faceless Demon sect. You can't possibly betray your own people in exchange for evidence." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Jiang Wenyuan has already gone crazy. We don't need evidence to deal with him. In the past, no matter how much trouble Jiang Wenyuan caused, the Eastern Qi imperial family only treated his actions as small trouble and did not take it to heart. Even if Jiang Wenyuan had recruited a martial arts grandmaster, the Eastern Qi kingdom would not have been afraid, let alone the fact that the Eastern Qi kingdom had no lack of martial arts grandmasters. But now he has dug his own grave. He even dared to intervene in the struggle between the Eastern Qi imperial family. This was already a big taboo. It would be strange if the Eastern Qi imperial family did not kill him. This time, the Guanzhong torture room is only here to complete the mission. As long as the Eastern Qi imperial family is satisfied with this result, our mission is considered completed. I don't need evidence that he killed Qiu Zhensheng. I only need evidence that he colluded with the crown prince and tried to provoke the internal strife of the Eastern Qi imperial family. In Chu Xiu's view, he had completed the mission. As for the person who completed the mission, it fell on the General Fang Jinqi of the Breaking Edge Battalion. After Mr. Liu returned to the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, Jiang Wenyuan asked, "Has Chu Xiu been dealt with?" Mr. Liu shook his head and said, "It's easy to deal with Chu Xiu, but that Wang Jin has been following Chu Xiu around. Your Highness, you also know that Wang Jin is an expert from the Imperial Palace. Although she is a eunuch, she is the Emperor's confidant and is not easy to deal with. If I make a mistake and expose myself, I'm afraid I won't be able to make a move again." Jiang Wenyuan scolded in a low voice, "This damn eunuch is really a hindrance." Jiang Wenyuan never had a good impression of eunuchs. After the Liu imperial family ousted the Jiang imperial family, the eunuchs in the imperial palace were the first to change sides and directly surrender to the other party. From then on, Jiang Wenyuan knew that these dead eunuchs who had lost their roots were not reliable at all. Jiang Wenyuan waved his hand and said, "All right, since that's the case, then find a chance to make a move." Mr. Liu nodded and walked down calmly. However, at this moment, the communication jade slip on his waist lit up. Looking at the contents, Mr. Liu couldn't help but reveal a mysterious look. Jiang Wenyuan subconsciously asked, "Who is it?" Mr. Liu said nonchalantly, "It's a fellow disciple of my Faceless Demon sect." Jiang Wenyuan casually waved his hand and didn't care. He was only an ally with the Faceless Demon sect, not a master-servant relationship. He didn't want to know some of the inside stories of the Faceless Demon sect, and the Faceless Demon sect probably wouldn't tell him. Walking down the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, Mr. Liu's eyebrows twitched. He immediately began to order the disciples of the Faceless Demon sect to leave the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, and the Prince of Enli's palace silently. The message just now was sent by Chu Xiu. He said that the Faceless Demon sect wanted evidence of Jiang Wenyuan working with the Crown Prince, and that he was already prepared to make a move on Jiang Wenyuan. If he succeeded, the Faceless Demon sect would also be able to take advantage of the situation. Mr. Liu was very satisfied with Chu Xiu's attitude. Although in Mr. Liu's eyes they were all on the same side, helping for free and sharing benefits were two different concepts. Now that Mr. Liu had helped Chu Xiu obtain Jiang Wenyuan's evidence, Chu Xiu would also be able to give Mr. Liu a certain amount of benefits. This would be considered fair, and it would also make Mr. Liu feel that this direct descendant of the Kunlun demon sect really knew how to conduct himself. Currently, Mr. Liu's status in the Prince of Enli's palace was that of a guest, and an extremely important one at that. It was very easy for him to get some clues as evidence. After getting the thing, Mr. Lu secretly gave it to Chu Xiu, while Chu Xiu left Cheng Zhouhai and the others and went to Qiu Zhenqing's manor alone to meet Fang Zhenqi. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.